turn the corner, I look this way, and I jump back really quick, and I was like, Shane Cook, eviction, we own the house, and nobody's saying anything. And somebody was standing there pointing a gun at me, and I'm like, and so I kind of, it's like, anybody there? Like, nobody answers, nothing. I went back around, and it's a life-size cutout of Princess Leia in the corner pointing a gun at me.
Let's talk tails.
Are you looking for a residential or commercial space to own or invest in? You'll want to meet my guest today on Tales with Taylor. He is a full-time professional realtor working with residential, commercial, and investments in the Southeast Valley of the Phoenix metro area. He has earned so many acronyms that if I attempted to say them all, I know I'm gonna mess up and get all tongue-tied. So you can just, look at the show notes. He is also an active investor and developer with a 195-unit apartment complex under development. He has served as the Arizona Realtors 2026 president-elect, a recent 2023 graduate of the NAR Leadership Academy, the 2026 chair of the Leading Edge Advisory Board on the Strategic Planning Committee, and as an NAR director. He lives in Gilbert, Arizona, where he serves on his HOA board. It's Shane Cook, and really the reason why we're here. So thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me today. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you because, we had quite a journey trying to find this place. And really, you are the realtor who helped us get this studio space. So
it was a unique ask, so it took us a little bit to get it done, but it looks great. You guys did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. It was one of those things where I was happy that you were willing to be flexible with us. Because at first, as a business, we thought we need a commercial space. Let's look at commercial space. We looked at some commercial spaces. But then we thought about what our clients said, and our clients kept saying they loved coming to our home because of how just homey it felt. It didn't feel like a stuffy studio. So then I was like, okay.
Less intimidating.
Why don't we do that then? Why don't we just get a home and then outfit it into a studio? And then bam, here we are.
It's oftentimes that you guys aren't necessarily a startup, right? But younger businesses, newer businesses, start looking for that commercial space, and they most of the time end up with something different than they come in that they think they're looking for.
Yeah, and just the amount of finances that went down to it, of going into someone else's pocket versus having really an investment idea. Because what we thought was, if for some reason this didn't work out, we still have an asset at the end of the day. Yep. And so what really got you involved in real estate in the first place?
So I've been brought up in an entrepreneurial environment my entire life. Come from farm families, which I consider like the original entrepreneurs. They solved all their own problems with less raw materials and everything, So I just feel like I've been in the entrepreneurial training my entire life. And when I got out of college, my dad and I were trying not to work with each other.
Which is surprising, knowing, since I know your dad.
So we've worked together for a long time now, and we said over and over again, I shouldn't go work with him right away. And I think I was done with college, early, like in December sometime, early in the semester and early in the year. And I think by March of '98 is when we just decided to work together. And so my dad's been a finance guy and a real estate guy most of my teenage, adolescent, and adult life. And so that's just what really attracted me. It was a concept that I wanted to do what he did, but I didn't really know what he did. And so what we did is we started building a business just fixing and flipping houses. He found a Gilbert family who invested $400,000 with us at 12% interest. So we just paid 12% on that $400,000 all the time and started buying houses, fixing them, and selling them. And so over the period of about 10 years, that was '98. So over the period of about 10 years, that business went from buying houses from other people, fixing and flipping them, to buying houses at the auctions ourselves, because I figured out the foreclosure auctions and built one of the first digital tracking databases of foreclosure auctions in the county. And we became competitive at the auctions. And then we got to a point where we were buying more houses than we could repair. And about that time, my dad had started a private mortgage bank. And those two packaged really get well together. We could sell our extra house inventory to other investors, take a small down payment, create that that note that was another asset, right, that we could leverage with institutional banks and lines of credit. And mostly that's an arbitrage play. Raise money at 12%, we lent it out at 18%. We would then again refinance that or arbitrage it with the leverage it with the institutional line of credit, like maybe at 8-9%. So you're just making the difference in there. So that was really that's what brought me to real estate, and my first 10 years in the business is building that business to 5 Western states, and then the recession happened.
So what do you look for in an investment property like that? Like, how do you know you could take something, flip it, and actually, get a profit on it at the end of the day? Most of the time on most normal markets.
Yeah, so if we're just talking houses, because it's different for different asset classes. But in houses, it really was... for us, learn as much as you can about the property. With an auction, it was very short. We really had less than 24 to 48 hours to drive the property, which may or may not be occupied, attempt to get in it if it's not occupied to see what it's like, and then attend the auction with as much information as you can. And so for us, that was just answering all of those questions about current condition, and we had done it enough and well enough that you evaluate the property of every house based on its repaired value, based on the comparable sales in the neighborhood, and just back it in from that. What repairs, what did I see at that house? It needs a new roof, it needs a new pool, so you back all of that in. And at that point in time, it would come up to our maximum bid. I would communicate that to our person who was at the auctions, and that's how we did it in multiple cities across the country, is just... We knew what was coming to auction. We tracked it. We drove it. We did our best to assess what it looked like. We fixed, at that point in time, we had fixed hundreds of houses. So we had an idea of what all of those things cost, just roughly. And we were good enough at it that I think in the period from like middle of 04 to middle of 05, when it was really, really just crazy before the recession, we probably bought and sold 1,000 houses at the auctions here just in Maricopa County.
Wow. And then what got you into the residential world of working with everyday people like that?
That all kind of disappeared in the recession. I literally went from a positive $2 million tax return one year to a negative $2.5 million tax return the next year.
Whoa.
So,
the life of a realtor is a roller coaster.
Well, and that wasn't really a realtor. So at that point in time, I wasn't a licensed realtor. I got my license to liquidate the properties we were foreclosing on.
Okay.
So we didn't own a lot of properties in the recession. We had a lot of paper. We had a lot of notes, mortgages against properties. And we really could tell the recession was coming before most people, because we actually had investors buy properties from us, give us the 10 or 20% down, fix the house, and walk away.
Ooh.
Way before people were losing their house.
Interesting.
Way like 06-ish. Before, which
that's like 2 years before.
A year to 2 years, right? Is kind of where I put it. The froth of it was probably 08, but it really started piling on late 06, early 07, from my recollection. And so I got my license to liquidate our own properties. I've been really good at liquidating REO properties. My broker had REO as bank-owned properties. My broker at the time had relationships with HUD and other banks that were foreclosing on properties. So I moved into doing REO properties mostly. And as that volume went away, I had to figure out what was next for me. New business, go do agency for other people. And I just said, okay, I'm going to use the skills I've learned to be a realtor, because I think I can be a realtor for the rest of my life, and it won't limit me from doing more investments or doing more development. In fact, it probably benefits.
I would say it probably helps your situation of being able to really just take things from the beginning to the end.
Yep. Yeah. So I just took my skill set and my relationships at the time, and I was, barely paying the bills, listing the REO stuff, and transitioned to doing it for other people. And that took a while to get up to where it was paying the bills. But, that's what I tell most realtors who get into the business, or people who think that they, want to do this for a living, is that be prepared for it to take 3 to 5 years for you to build a great business that, generates regular leads and transactions and compensation, because it doesn't happen overnight. Some people are great at it and they do fantastic that first year. And some people, it takes a while to build the amount of relationships that it takes to just have those things come in. Like today, I don't go out and necessarily try to build that list of people that I deal with. I just talk and have relationships, and the referrals come from those people and the other relationships I've built. And that's just the way I work my business. People work it differently than I do, but that's the way it's become comfortable and generates an income that I like, and I get to see investment opportunities that once in a while I jump in myself.
Nice. And so if someone is just starting, you're telling them, they need to be patient, but what would be your suggestion to help build that book of business?
Relationships. Some of the different realtors that I watch and, have different systems. One of the best ones I like is I watch a fellow EXP agent, Dustin Runyon, and some of his group. They do 20 connects a day.
Okay.
20 connects, you're looking for a 2 or 3 minute conversation, and you're really looking to build and establish relationships, right? Because that's what it really comes down to, is the relationships around you know your skill set and the value you bring to those decisions or those investments, and they refer you to people because you've helped them be successful at that same thing for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Because, real estate, it can be scary. Buying a home is not an inexpensive thing to do. It's sometimes, the biggest investment that a person, will make. And so, having a relationship with a realtor is so important. You don't want to just, pick up the phone and call anyone you see on a park bench or anything like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
And so I think also choosing a brokerage is really important. And you're part of EXP Realty.
Yeah.
So, what is it about, how did you choose a brokerage to work with?
The first one was my dad owned it. And so he was just in our office. He ran the real estate part of the different ventures my dad was a part of. And so that was just the easiest one, is the first one, right? And that was mostly not for service to other people, mostly to service the REOs in our own business. So when REOs and short sales kind of calmed down, I went out and interviewed a few. And at that time, I was really new to the whole process, right? So I ended up at a boutique brokerage. At the time, it was called UBG. Today, it's somebody else has bought it and runs it, and it's called Good Oak. And that was just what I would consider a boutique brokerage, where you had an office you could go to and a community you could tap into that would help you learn how to become a professional realtor and make that your full-time business. And then when I felt like it was time for me to take a new step and grow out of there, I had already started adding commercial to the things I was doing. So I started that in about 2016. And I was looking for a bigger brokerage where I could add value to the other realtors by being their commercial partner. Many residential realtors don't do commercial, and vice versa.
So true.
And I just have a diverse experience set that allows me to do both, and I enjoy doing both. So I continued.
And I think it's a benefit because we were just able to pivot together. It wasn't like, oh, snaps, I don't want to do commercial. Looks like we're not working together, Shane. It was, okay, hey, we decided we want to do residential instead of the commercial.
Right.
And you're like, great, let's look at different stuff,
Exactly. So I found a statewide brokerage that was bigger and just mostly bigger, not necessarily a boutique brokerage, right? Because I don't know what the number count was, but I would say I went from a brokerage with maybe 100 or 200 agents to a brokerage with maybe 2,000 agents or something like that.
I remember UBG days, actually.
Right? I think that's where we met, actually,
I think so too.
is that time as well. You were doing a presentation for another realtor. It was great. And so then that brokerage brought in a commercial arm after I had started. And so for a period of time, I was getting some good commercial referrals, and that was one of the main reasons I was there. And then after a period of time, that dwindled because they built a commercial arm inside their brokerage with another commercial broker who had way more experience than I did. Like, that wasn't a position I was ready for at the time. So they made a great decision for themselves. And then eventually I decided to just start looking again for another opportunity at a brokerage that might not have a commercial angle, where I could work residential and commercial, and again, help other agents add to their relationships with their clients by providing the commercial when it's needed. And so then that's when I really opened the scope of what I was looking at and found EXP. And so EXP is a worldwide brokerage. It is all digital. It's all online. There's a digital world. There's avatars. That doesn't mean there's no offices and stuff, but it just fit the way I thought about working.
Nice.
I work mostly out of my house. If I need an office, I go to a title company or a Starbucks, or
Right.
I've got like a Regis membership through EXP, so I can use the Regis offices if I really need an office. But what really appealed to me the most was that's a single brokerage across the entire country. So it's not like different franchises in each
Right.
state and things like that. And they've got, I think, close to 90,000 agents now. And so that's a much wider pool to be in to communicate about adding value for commercial to residential realtors. So
Definitely.
I think their in-state count is probably roughly the same as the last brokerage I was at, but their national footprint is a lot bigger.
That's very cool. You know, I was having an interview with someone who does simplified adulting, and she's talking about how, you know, Gen Zers and, you know, even some of my millennial friends, they just don't feel like they can even afford to be a homeowner. What would be the advice you would give to someone? Because as someone who has, you know, is a homeowner, you know, I definitely see the value of building your own nest egg a little bit. But it could be scary. You know, I purchased my home that I live in for my residential home back in 2016.
Yeah. How old were you, if you don't mind?
I was 26.
Yep.
So, you know.
Today, the average age for the first-time home buyer is up to 40.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah, for the first time, the National Association of Realtors recently put out statistics that says the average age of the first home buyer is 40. So I bought mine in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
And so that, for me, that was 30 years ago. That seems
fine.
odd. It seems odd to say that already, right?
Yeah,
But
no,
then-
even for me, when I was trying to think, I'm like, wait, how old was I? Yeah,
Right.
so, you know, I was in my 20s still. And, you know, for me, it was a little bit scenario that, you know, Eric, who you know, my husband, we were looking for a wedding venue.
Yeah.
We had a small budget for our wedding. We looked at venues and we said, why are we going to give this venue $10,000 to be there for 3 hours? What if we just use this $10,000 and put it into a deposit, and then we could just own the venue
Is that right?
and just do it in the backyard?
So I think that's a great segue. I think that's one of the best ways you can talk about, you know, getting ready to buy a house. Like, think about that at your wedding, or you're right. Like, you ask for all these gifts. Do you really need all these gifts? Wouldn't you maybe rather own a house? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, I know people don't like to give cash, but if you were talking about, I think there's even platforms out there now. If you're talking about raising money to buy a house at your wedding instead of gifts, I think that makes a lot more sense. Another statistics I've heard recently, I don't know the exact numbers, but the net worth of a homeowner versus a renter, it's something like $7,000 as a renter and 40 times more as a homeowner.
Wow.
And so that's the first thing I would say somebody who's talking about, you know, buying a house for the first time is you're on the right path for personal and familiar wealth
Right.
and generational wealth. Though that's where it starts, is generally at a home for most people. And so be creative, right? The ways we've always bought houses aren't going to be the way we buy houses in the future. There's lots of down payment assistance programs out there. So if you're maybe not at certain levels of income, you qualify for down payment assistance. So I've helped quite a few people buy their first home with little or no money down in some of those down payment assistance. Now, usually you have to drive further out to find those type of homes and loans and different things.
But goodness, give it a few years and like go to places like Buckeye that now it's like it's a full community. You know, I feel like there's a lot of those places that 10 years ago it's like, oh, Maricopa, that's so far. There's nothing out there. And now you go to Maricopa, you're like, this is a whole community down here.
That's why we bought investment property down there, right? Exactly. So it's definitely harder. The National Association of Realtors and lots of other municipalities are trying to figure out how to create more inventory, not just more inventory in general, but more affordable inventory.
Right.
I think lots of times people say affordable housing and they think another low-income apartment complex. addresses that. It addresses housing for some of the lower income, but it doesn't address home ownership. And as a realtor, I try to separate those two things in the discussion, because there's a lot of discussion out there about affordable housing. And if it's affordable rental housing, in my opinion, it's needed in some cases. But if it's not working on a bridge to affordable home ownership, then we are not creating familial or generational wealth. And real estate is made for familial and generational wealth, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I think what you're saying is that you just kind of need to find someone to ask the questions to.
Absolutely.
Because if you, I think I felt more comfortable because I knew some people that were in real estate. So it was more comfortable to ask the questions, explore. But for those who maybe are, just getting out of college that, they don't really know a realtor yet, it could be intimidating to think, oh, I think, and I had this perspective before, that a realtor is like a lawyer. You're going to put the ticker tape on, I'm going to have to pay you for every moment I'm with you to ask questions and so forth. Yeah. But that's not necessarily true.
Nope, most of the time it's not. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and so I think people do need to just get comfortable with asking the questions because, home ownership, granted, some of the days when, the AC goes out, I'm like, gosh, I miss calling someone and just saying, hey, my AC's broken, fix it,
right?
Instead
of the $12,000 bill or whatever.
$12,000, yes. Yeah. But at the same time, it's still nice to know that my mortgage rate's my mortgage rate, and next year it's not going to go up for the heck of it because inflation or whatever excuse that person wants to make.
That makes a lot of sense. So another tool, I don't think families or schools really teach financial literacy.
Oh no, right? I wish they did.
Right. So I tapped into Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad like in the late 90s, and I would this isn't, I don't make any money from Rich Dad Poor Dad, no pitch, I'm not an affiliate, none of that stuff. They created a game, it's a board game, and it's Cash Flow 101. And it's like, it's not exactly the same, but it's like practice of the financial literacy that you need to understand. Number one, to buy a house, right? But number two, to become a real estate investor or a real estate owner beyond your house and it to be providing income for your family. Generally, fairly passive income for your family. And so many people learn through games very well. Not a cheap game, not a short game. Lots of math, but use a calculator. Yeah. But an excellent way to play in a safe environment to learn the skills that it takes to be ready to buy a home or to buy investment real estate.
How old should someone be to do that game?
I actually don't know for the Cash Flow 101, but he makes a cash flow for kids too. So he's got it all covered. Actually, I think I'm going to buy it for my grandkids this year.
My son loves math.
Yeah.
Was honestly getting hard on him for not knowing 1,300 times 1,300. He was off by a couple digits. He's like, oh gosh, why couldn't I get that? I'm like, you're 6. Calm down. And so, that might be a really good game to do.
Yeah. And so the Cash Flow for Kids is just simplified, but it's a similar thing, the same concepts. And when I played it with my son and he was younger, it didn't take long before they were ready to move to the other one.
Wow, that's awesome. And you're so right. People learn through games and song. If it's fun, then, you want to do it and then it just connects and you remember things.
Yep, that emotion helps it connect easier too. Yep.
But Rich Dad Poor Dad, I definitely read that prior to buying a house and it really made me think more about real estate. I was a happy renter. I didn't think of anything else. And then, it was Eric and I renting and okay, what do we want to do? Let's just use this money for a backyard.
Right? Absolutely. That makes sense. So then back to your other question of, what are you going to do to, repair or remodel a house before you put it back on the market? The biggest cost items that generally have the highest return are kitchen and bath remodels, exterior paint. I mean, and some obvious things. If your roof is not, if it's at the end of its life, then you probably need a new roof. It might not necessarily generate the same return as a new kitchen, depending on how you budget and spend. If you overspend doing your kitchen, you're not going to make all the money back. Right. But if you do it in a strategic way, you will likely get more money than you put into it back. So the big items are the bathrooms, the floors, the paint, the mechanicals.
And so, I know I've kind of always thought like, oh, why would I put, 10 grand into updates? Is it really gonna, translate into 10 plus grand into a value?
Done right.
Done right?
Done right in the right places, like spent well in a kitchen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then, I always feel like people always say like, oh, it's a buyer's market. It's a seller's market. It's buyers, how can one predict what market it's going to be in? And then when should you really be selling in a seller's market?
Yeah.
Do you really have to wait till that moment, or, what should people do in terms of all these market changes?
Yeah. There's no crystal ball.
Okay.
It's just like, how many times have they said they're going to lower rates in the past year and a half?
Oh,
and if you were following that,
yes.
you wouldn't be making some bad decisions probably, right?
Yeah.
So there's no crystal ball. There's a lot of data and statistics here in the Valley. The Cromford report has a ton of residential data. And so, again, your realtor would have that expertise. You wouldn't necessarily have that expertise. You could go pay for the Cromford report if you wanted to, but I'm not sure why, if you're just doing it for one house or something like that. And you can start to see data trends. But again, they're analyzing historic data and attempting to predict future trends. And again, nobody's got a crystal ball. They're pretty good at it when the Cromford is, but again, nobody's got a crystal ball. So do you want to wait to sell in a seller's market or buy in a buyer's market? I've bought and sold in both over the years. If you're waiting to try and buy at the bottom and sell at the top all the time, you're going to miss it. If that's truly what you're trying to do, you're likely going to miss it. And you don't necessarily have to buy at the dead bottom or sell at the dead top to create good income, to generate a good return, to protect wealth. So I don't really try and predict the market per se. There's some seasonalities to the market that's different in local markets.
Right, like our summer's nationally a little more of a seller's market because buyers are trying to move in between a school sessions.
It's not necessarily nationally, like it's more specific than that. Here in Arizona, like in other places, the summers, it continues to peak through the summer.
Yeah.
Here we generally peak through the spring, April, May, and then slow down a bit through the summer.
I've always moved in the summer.
Before another small uptick at school time, then it drops off throughout the end of the year through January, and then come January, February, March, it starts to pick up again. You go back and look at the historical, other than like the COVID, other than some
little
anomalies, you can see a dead pattern of the yearly fluctuation here in Arizona. And that's slightly different in different places, right? I have tried to say, okay, like we are in a buyer's market in most areas in Phoenix in the non-luxury properties.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think COVID also really has changed the mindset where people want to be homeowners, but I think they're still feeling hesitant to affording to be a homeowner.
Right. So affordability is a huge part, right? If you can afford to buy a home when you can buy a home.
Yeah.
Because that makes the most sense. I don't care if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. If it's a ridiculous froth, like you were seeing in 07 and 08, there should probably be some hesitancy, right? But I bought my last house in, I think it was March of 12, not the one I'm in now. And I think the statistical bottom for residential houses in Maricopa County after the recession was like September of 11. So I wasn't too far off of the bottom, but I wasn't trying to match a bottom. I was just at a time where I thought we were in depressed asset scenario, right? So I thought, wow, it's a great time to buy a depressed asset. Whether or not I'm at the bottom was unimportant to me, right? And so I got that asset and rode the appreciation that came as our market recovered, right? So that's really how I pay more attention. So when people are talking to me now's a great buying opportunity. It's a slight buyer's market in most Phoenix metropolitan areas, especially in the non-luxury segment.
Which this might be different depending on when you're watching this.
It could be, right? It could be, exactly. Usually we consider that over $1 million. That changes again by some localities, right? $1 million buys something completely different in Scottsdale and Queen Creek than it does in Buckeye.
Right, of course.
Right, so you got to kind of look at it that way. But it's a great time to look at an asset. You know, what are they talking about interest rates? Well, they're talking about interest rates are still going to go down. If interest rates are going to go down, what's going to happen to property values? Likely they're going to go up because demand's going to go up. And there's no solution to low inventory, which we've got generally low inventory. Like, inventory's been climbing for the last year or two, but when you look at a historical market, across the nation, we need something like 5 million homes to catch up with the amount of demand for housing that we need, right? And so you can't catch up with that lack of general inventory really quickly. So it'll, my opinion, again, you can't read a crystal ball. We're in a great time to be buying. Should interest rates come down like they're talking about, that will create more demand. The longer interest rates stay where they are, the more normalized it is, and the more people are getting sick of where they are and think, okay, well, this is what normal is going to be. How do I make normal work, right? So we may have some more downside, but I feel like it's a great buying opportunity.
Yeah, and I think people do have to keep in mind that, you know, things don't necessarily always revert back. I know we kind of had a little bit of a hesitation of like, wow, this place is like double the house that we live in cost, but that was 2016,
right.
You know, and you can't have that comparison mindset all the time, you know, because it's just a different time, different scenarios, and as long as it's gonna fit your needs and, you know, be what you want, it shouldn't quite matter if you can afford it and, you know, make
That's
it work
more of
for
the
you.
conversation I try to have, right?
Yeah.
I haven't acted as a realtor for other people in that depressed market before, but I have in the COVID market where people were making crazy offers, like 13, 15, 17 offers on a house in the first 2 days, people waiving appraisals, people waiving inspections. Buying houses in a market like that is insane.
Yeah.
And I don't mean crazy choice, it's a crazy process. Even for the sellers, it's a lot easier to look at 1 or 2 or 3 offers and compare them. But when you start getting 15, 16, 17 offers and you've got to talk about all of them and compare all of them, it really creates mind mush for a lot of people.
That could be overwhelming.
Yeah.
How do you keep those offers straight?
You build a spreadsheet and you hope your client likes spreadsheets.
Yes.
And you communicate, that whole process with them. I try to make it so if we really do have 20 offers, they're only looking at the top 2 or 3 or 4 in the spreadsheet for comparison, even though they're all there, right? I try to filter it out for them and be like, okay, these appear to be the best based on the conversation of your wants and needs and discussions.
Yeah.
We've got all of these others too if you want to look at them, but these appear to be the top ones.
And so if someone was looking, maybe they have a bigger family now, they're growing, it is time for them to go into a new home. How does someone maneuver selling and buying a house?
Oh, so that's a great question. There are a lot of creative tools out there in the marketplace. So I'm helping my stepson and his family do exactly that.
Okay.
With a product called Knock, Knock.
Okay.
And they provide a bridge loan and a guaranteed offer on your current house, which helps you qualify to purchase the second house without selling your first house. And then once you move out, you have 45 days to list the house and 6 months to sell the house.
Okay.
So the goal is really to sell the house and not go back to the guaranteed offer, because the guaranteed offer is kind of a low-ball offer, right, really? So they help facilitate the purchase, and there's some risk to it if you can't sell your house in the 6 months or you don't follow all their rules. There's some penalties, but they provide a financial tool that allows you to buy before you sell.
Okay. That's really great to know, because that's definitely been, we're not there yet, but it's been one of those concerns of like, what do we do? And I know growing up, we had a lot of issues like selling our New York home when we lived in Maryland. And that became a big problem with the family. And so it's like, wow, how do you ever let go of your asset, not with the what if of having a new home or being able to sell that asset and so forth.
Yep.
So it's great that there's a tool there. It seems like there's so many different options nowadays. You hear about the offer pad. You have the 72-hour guy that is always on.
I love the hand movement. That's fantastic.
So, how do you not get distracted by all those things?
Those are all investor buyers, just buying your house at a discount to make it, to either fix and flip them and make their money there, or just to make an arbitrage by wholesaling them to somebody else, never actually closing on it themselves, or like Open Doors is they actually close on it themselves, turn around and attempt to sell it. But OfferPad and Open Doors stock ain't looking so hot recently, and that's a much harder gig than most people think it is. As I've done lots of buying.
Makes it seem easy. The marketing makes it seem, I'm just going to get a cash offer and it's going to be awesome, and I don't have to worry about showing the home.
All of those things are right. You are going to pay a price for that convenience. And if you're fine with the cost of that convenience, that might be a great tool for you. It is not going to get you the most house for your money.
Right. And so if you're
the most
looking
money
at
for your house.
And if you're looking at your home almost as an investment, as an opportunity to perhaps use that asset to help you get to something bigger or so forth, probably don't look at those tools as much.
Correct. So we flip back to the Kiyosaki discussion and the financial literacy discussion. Really, I would try to get you to start thinking about getting yourself into a position where you might be able to buy the house without selling the old house, right? That's not always an option, right? But if somebody's not even having that conversation or thinking about it, and you can start having that conversation and thinking about it, there might be other resources they have, or you might just open that discussion, right? Because then you are really taking, Kiyosaki would call your own house not an asset. In his terms, he would call it a doodad because it takes money out of your pocket instead of putting money in your pocket.
That's true.
You would take what Kiyosaki considers a doodad and make it an asset as a rental property generating income, right? Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has all the resources or the skills and stuff to do that. But that's how you start working towards more than just familial wealth, towards generational wealth.
No, that's a great idea. And, they always say like location. And that's where, location can help you with that future proofing where, for example, my personal, residential home right now, right next to a high school.
Right.
And so if we chose to move for whatever reasons, that could be a great family home for someone else because you're right next to a high school and an elementary school.
Yeah. And if you have the resources through partnerships with family or friends, or there's lots of different structures and creative ways to put it together, but I wouldn't always necessarily recommend selling the old house, moving to a new house. There's a possibility to turn it into an asset, and you have the risk tolerance for that. Right?
Yeah. No, there's choices. There's definitely choices. Because then the thing is too, perhaps you try the investment route. You can always, at the end of the day, decide to sell it. Like I have friends who are long-term renters at a home that this year, after 9 years of living in the home, the owners are like, we're selling it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're not going to be able to rent here anymore.
Yep.
But that was their choice. And that's, something as a homeowner you can choose to do. You can do the long-term rental for however long until it maybe doesn't make sense for you anymore.
Yep. Well, and nowadays it doesn't even have, in some communities, maybe you turn your house into an Airbnb. Like in the non-HOA communities, that's probably easier than the HOA communities. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be a long-term rental either. There are different midterm rentals and short-term. There's different creative asset structures that might allow you to keep the house and turn it into an asset instead of a doodad. And that might allow you to afford more of a house on the next house. Who knows how you structure it all together, right?
Got my mind thinking. I know we're not quite there yet because we love the school that my son's buying, but you got me thinking.
I even got creative. Like I was looking at the knock paperwork, and it's a bridge loan, and my opinion is based on the paperwork. And again, you'd have to have a lawyer and really read the paperwork. But my creative mind goes to, I read the paperwork and I said, wow, they can actually just pay off the knock bridge loan, and they could keep the old house if it all worked out right? So if I just started thinking that, can they rent it for more than they owe if they just pay off the bridge loan after they already qualified for the new loan? So there just continues to maybe be more creative ways that you could figure it out.
Which is great because I don't think people are aware of these creative ways. It's just like with the financial literacy, these are types of things that should be required like senior class. Let's talk about balancing a checkbook. Let's talk about the processes of buying a home or selling. Like these are all things that before you become an adult, we really need to be aware of.
I would agree. And we don't teach it to our kids at any level in school, really.
No.
Not even mostly in college or.
Oh, no. You would have to take a very specific class because you already have a passion and desire for it, not just because you're going to be a citizen, in our community.
Yep, exactly.
And so you mentioned, HOA versus non-HOA, and I know that you are on the committee for your HOA.
Not advisable, just FYI.
Okay. You're like, so don't get mad at Shane. For things like that. So tell me, what do you think the benefits perhaps of an HOA versus a non-HOA, being someone who lives in an HOA?
I would say a level of consistency.
As someone who lives in a non-HOA, I've been feeling that lately.
a basic level of maintenance and presentability that is not required in a non-HOA. So there will be no randomly purple and pink houses. There'll be no
Tons of cars
in the front yard. Yeah. There's actually like I think my HOA's paperwork says first you have to park in the garage, then you have to park on the driveway, and then you can park in the street. So if you park 2 cars in a garage and leave your driveway open and park a third car in the road the whole time, that third car is not supposed to be parked there. Yeah. How many cars are there parked in your non-HOA neighborhood? Should we show them a picture out front?
We can show a picture out front of here. We can show a picture out front of my, there's times where my driveway's blocked almost because of just cars all along. And you'll have the cars that are just pulled in. My actual residential home's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Which
you might have livestock in your neighbor's yards. Who knows?
The goats, the chickens, the roosters. Yeah.
All of that's less likely in an HOA. Not necessarily. There are HOAs that allow that stuff, but you just have what I'd say a minimum standard and a level of consistency in an HOA versus a non-HOA. Is it restrictive? It can be.
For the right reasons, I'm learning.
For the right reasons, it's beneficial. I would say there's a huge population of my small 300 home neighborhood who has no idea what the rules of the HOA and the CC&Rs are. And so this goes back to representation. I bought in a new home subdivision. Mm-hmm. If you don't take a realtor to a new home subdivision with you for the first visit, generally you are not going to be represented. Mm-hmm. And you are alone with the agent who represents the seller as the one working with you most of the time. And they do not have your fiduciary best interests in mind. They're not negotiating on your behalf. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is thinking that they go in there, and some people even think that, if I don't bring an agent in here, I'll pay a lower price. And it doesn't happen that way either with new home builders. They just make a better profit if no agent's involved.
Yeah.
And so...
and every HOA is a bit different. It's not like there's a set of rules. So you can also kind of, similar to you interviewing your brokerage, you can interview almost the HOAs. What are the various rules?
Well, you could look at the CC&Rs of a new home subdivision. Usually those are available when you walk in. If you're buying in an HOA subdivision, sometimes those documents are available online. Not always. Sometimes you have to actually get into the contract process and pay a fee to get some of those documents. So different scenarios for different HOAs. But you can also, as a community, change the CC&Rs in the bylaws. Now there's usually different thresholds of how many members of the community have to vote.
Okay.
And so they're not always written in stone because home builders generate the HOA rules and never live in the community. And I don't necessarily think they're always community oriented.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And I guess I grew up in an HOA, and so I just had a bad taste of them towing my dad's car away because they felt it didn't move enough. Or
I've had to have a few cars towed.
See, that type of stuff just hurt me as a child. My childhood car just got taken away.
And some people in the HOA are very serious about the CC&Rs and the bylaws, and some people are...
Well, we had someone in our court that was very serious about it. Yes. So our Christmas lights were up for a little too long, and we were getting that letter.
Yeah.
And so I guess for that, I was so against finding an HOA. But now, living in a non-HOA for some years now. I'm like, okay, maybe
there's
rules are good.
Maybe
Rules are
there's
good.
some benefit.
Yes, no, I definitely see the benefit. Granted, I'm sure I'd be getting plenty of letters with my weeds, but something to work on, and that's where you find landscapers.
Right? That's the funny thing, right? Is probably for, I don't know, some of these yards, probably for less than $50 or $100 a month, you could just eliminate it
Exactly.
altogether.
And I think, I feel like there's so many lessons we learn in business that just needs to be reflected in life. So in business, we're learning just, keep in our center of genius, just do what you're good at and delegate the rest. I feel like everyday citizens need to hear that. Everyday worldwide people need to hear that. If you don't want to do the landscaping, you don't have to. Just delegate that out.
Yeah. It helps to have the income to do all of that as well, right? But
It does,
yes.
but time is money and money is time.
Yep.
And your time is such a more valuable asset. And I think perhaps being in business has allowed me to have that mindset more versus when I was just, a W-4 employee. But I could either spend an hour doing landscaping, or I could spend an hour with my kids, or spend an hour doing work where I get paid.
So I think just that analysis, right? I don't know that many employees think about their time like that, right? But yeah, I've got a dollar number per hour. I don't charge a dollar number per hour, right? But I got a dollar number per hour in my mind of what my time and value is worth. And, if it's not something I choose to do as a relief of stress, maybe it's yard work this week because I just need to get rid of some stress, right? Then I try to delegate most of those things that, if I considered my time a $300 an hour time, I don't need to be doing $25 an hour stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, it's below your pay rate. And that's the thing, there's certain things where in the neighborhood you can find that high schooler who's going to be like so flippin' happy to make $50 to just mow the lawn. And so, yeah, I do love leveraging the children around the community.
And they're usually great for that, right?
Yeah.
Dog poop picker-upper, the yard cleaner.
Weed puller.
Exactly.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Make a little extra money.
Exactly. I know I was a hustler as a kid. I was, back east, so I had, the leaves and the snow. And as soon as I saw those leaves falling, I just saw money falling. I'm like, okay.
I did the paper route. I did dog poop picking up.
I never did that.
Yeah.
I was like, because I'm a cat person,
Yeah.
so I was like, I'm not going to.
I think at 12, I got my first job. I went into, maybe I worked before that too. I went into a fish store because I liked aquariums, and I talked him into giving me a job. He paid me $2 an hour under the table to clean fish tanks. So that was kind of like what I would consider maybe my first job. The other one was selling newspaper subscriptions door to door.
Nice, yeah.
All of that as I don't know, a 12 to 14-year-old or 10 to 14-year-old, something like that.
But you know what? I bet those skill sets of talking to strangers has helped you, later in your life.
Yeah. From a sales standpoint, the sooner you can remove all emotion from the discussion and the the better off you'll be as a salesperson.
And that's probably no matter what the industry is.
I would think so. You just gotta have to have tough skin,
Mm-hmm.
A no is not about you.
And no, it's not personal. I think that's the biggest thing. It's all business decisions. It's not, no, I don't like you, Shane. It's just, no, I don't want that house, or no, I'm not ready to buy, or no, I'm not ready to sell, or whatever that is.
And quite frankly, even if it was you, if your mind talk is going that it was you, you need to get out of your mind talk.
Yes.
It was a mistake. Learn from it. Move on.
Right. So true. So true. So we mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. Are there any other tales that you've, just love, that inspire you, that you've used in business, or that you just enjoy personally?
I don't know. I like one of my fun real estate stories to tell. It kind of points, laughs at myself. Back buying houses in foreclosure, we did a lot of evictions. I would do those evictions. Evictions can suck, especially after somebody's lost their house and different things like that. But so we had gone through an eviction on this house in Tempe, and we had to go all the way through a lockout, which is where you show up with the constable. Constable says, leave, lock the doors. You can come back for 24 hours and pick up more stuff. After that, it's done. Mm-hmm. And so we did this whole lockout. They took all their stuff. I went back to the house, and there was just still stuff everywhere. And I knocked on the door. Hey, it's Shane. Anybody here? Anybody here? And I've run into houses before we own them and been scared out, and I went into houses after we've owned them and been scared out. All kinds of stuff, people in houses. And so I'm just careful. And it's a split level house. And so it's a floor plan I've seen 100 times. You walk in the front door, it's on the mid-level. There's a living room and a kitchen. There's stair rooms up to bedrooms, and there's stair rooms down to a bedroom, and then a bathroom and a split. And so it's just creepy in this house. I'm walking through it. I go downstairs. Hello, and I turn the corner because the downstairs come in like one bedroom here and one bedroom here. And I turn the corner and I look this way, and I jump back really quick, and I was like, Shane Cook, eviction, we own the house, and nobody's saying anything. And somebody was standing there pointing a gun at me, and I'm like, and so I kind of, it's like, is anybody there? Like, nobody answers, nothing. I look back around, and it's a life-size cutout of Princess Leia in the corner pointing at me. That's one of my, like...
Hey, Arizona, though, that's a good instinct to just back away from it.
It's a little self-deprecating, but that's one of my favorite stories to tell because it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah,
like I said, in Arizona, too.
But it really was nothing, right? In the end. So I try to relate that story. Lots of things are scary in life, and in the end, they really turn out to be nothing once you get through them, right?
Except for refrigerators.
That's very true. I learned really early, do not open the refrigerator.
Yes.
Like, you only open one, maybe two refrigerators that make you puke, and then you don't open them anymore.
Yeah, so if you're gonna like take anything away from this episode, if you're looking at a place and the electricity's been out for a while, just don't open the refrigerator.
That's funny. Other than that, like inspiring stuff, I don't know. Like, I try to watch different stuff and listen to different stuff. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Mm-hmm. So, and it's mostly business and self-help stuff. I don't listen to a ton of pleasurable audio stuff. I read a little bit pleasure. And so I just very diverse, like from like metaphysical stuff, like the energy codes was one that I really liked. And that's, kind of metaphysical, business stuff. The Morning Miracle is a great business book.
Yes, thank you for that one, by the way.
Morning Miracle is a great
When you posted about it, it came at the time I needed it.
So right. Well, and whether you do it long term or do it short term or just think about the concepts that they teach, the savers are great tools. Great tools to use every day in the morning. Great tools to use once in a while. However you think about it, right? So stuff like that I really like. Go Giver. I forget who is that, but I think that's Bob. I forget, but that's another one. Yeah. Go Giver is a good one. I don't know. Some of my good old favorites are Good to Great. Like Good to Great's a great one. I go back and read that one maybe every 2 or 3 years. Nice. I try to listen to the Morning Miracle at least once a year. Yeah. Even I don't follow it every day, but it is part of my. It's like I don't specifically go, okay, I got to do the savers this morning, but I probably do 4 of them regularly as part of my habit anyway.
Just naturally. Yep. Yeah, the savers, I was doing it very ritually every day when we were before we got the space. Yeah. And it was just that, visualization, like I'm going to find a place and I'm going to be able to have my dad here and I'm going to be able to have a place that's, like all those things. And it's really kept me, I think, a little more grounded and calm throughout this,
The last time I really tapped into it, I was just kind of in a rut. Like, and for me, my saying is first world old white guy problems. My problems are almost all first world old white guy problems. Like, so I don't need a bunch of sympathy for my problems, right? But I was in a personal rut. Like I was not feeling motivated, just kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I just tapped right into it for 90 days, tried to hold myself to it pretty good. And it totally flipped me around. Got my head out of the gutter, got my confidence in the right place. Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. And then again, thank you. It wasn't until I saw you make a post about it on Facebook that I was like, oh, maybe I'll give it a shot. Because, people that I respect and like, I want to see what are they, reading or listening to help them. And so, I gave it a shot and it really helped.
Clearly, I love the Kiyosaki stuff. I've read, I don't know, most of those books that he did. went to, I don't know, 3 or 4 book studies with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Find somebody like, it doesn't really matter, you know, as long as that person's doing what you agree with ethically, right, and morally, and that type of stuff, find somebody like that in your life. It doesn't have to be somebody that I connect with, right? But those are some great ones. You know, Simon Sinek, people do a ton of watching him and learning from that.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss, you know, 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah,
I've read that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good ones, and so I think, you know, the overarching theme I feel of this episode really is, you know, you got to find those people, whether they're in a book or an audio, but then also just find those people whom, you know, are experts in their field, like it is real estate, and just ask the questions, you know, explore and see how many different possibilities there are, because there are so many more programs now than like when I was a kid, I feel, to just help people become homeowners. And, you know, although it might feel scary of when you look at the dollar price of what a home is, you're not paying that dollar price right up front. And as you said, there's times where you can even do a 0 down payment.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, I just had a client who's come back to me. We got him a house again in 12, so that was kind of towards the statistical bottom. But he used a USDA loan, a 0 down USDA loan. So we had to be in a geographical area that qualified for the USDA, and then his income had to fit all of that, but it did, right? And so 12 years later, he's got great equity in that house, and they're having the conversation, do we dump 150 grand in the backyard in the house, or do we go find a new house, right? And there's some of that, do I sell? We just did all that conversation like 2 days ago, so.
Yeah. So just have the conversations. Find someone.
I think he's got $250,000 of equity by the time we're done. So
that's awesome.
That's how you start building familial or generational wealth with 0 down.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so it's possible. It sounds like if you want to be a homeowner, you can find a way to become a homeowner.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Awesome. Just about putting the right team together and having the right discipline to get to that point.
Yeah, and you know, when you're in escrow, don't go buy that new car.
Yeah, no new cars. No, just wait until you're done closing. Right. You don't need the furniture till you're done closing.
Right, yeah, no, you don't. No, just triple check the measurements and then bring everything in. Yeah. Well, Shane, I just want to thank you again for just, you know, sticking by us. I felt terrible throughout this journey of finding this place. I just felt like we made you go all over the place, and then we changed our mind a bunch, but eventually we found the studio. And so just thank you so much for sticking by us, help us get this studio, and you know, now I get to do Tales with Taylor here and do a bunch of other productions. Right,
I love it. No, not a problem at all. That is the process, right? Like I said, I think most of the time when people come to me and say, I need to lease some commercial space and a small business, they really have no clue. And so it's part of understanding your business, your family, your needs, and then finding the right fit eventually. And it just happened to be different than you thought.
Yeah, and you know, no matter if it was commercial or residential, I can't control my neighbors. And so, you know, if they're going to be loud, and they're going to be loud.
Right.
You know, I think one of the places we were looking at, it was like a tattoo shop and Planned Parenthood. So I was like, I would have had picket fences or pickets, you know, signs outside, you know. But now here I just have landscaping, not bases. So.
We'll see if it comes through today, right?
Right, exactly. But just thank you so very much again, Shane. I so appreciate you. And, you know, as you heard, if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, or really just learn more about the real estate process, Shane Cook is your man. He's someone that you can trust and will tell you straight up what's up.
Thank you for that, and thank you for having me here today. This is great. I love what you guys were able to do with the place and how it runs.
Thank you again. So, all right, go out there and, you know, start living your life and start buying some real estate.
Thank you for watching Tales with Taylor. Please make sure you like and subscribe to the Financial Potion YouTube channel to never miss an episode.